$500,000 gone in the blink of an eye. A-Rod has been robbed of $500,000 worth of jewelry, electronics, and more in his rental SUV outside of a ballpark after he was broadcasting a game. He was in San Francisco broadcasting the Phillies versus Giants game, and not long after the game, he lost all of that from his car. It was either a thief or a group of thieves. There is still more information that will be coming out about the incident, but let's look at what happened and let's assess what went on from a risk management perspective. My name is Hayden Kopser. I am the co-founder and president of a brand new digital insurance brokerage called North Improvement LLC. You can visit us at northimprovement.com to learn more about us. But enough about the company. Let's start the very first episode of the Risk Directions podcast. That's what this is going to be called. And during this podcast, we are going to focus on things happening throughout the world and the risk management and risk protections and insurance aspect of what really went on. And we'll dive in. You'll be able to learn how to protect yourself. And if you manage clients, particularly in an episode like this where we talk about someone who is extremely wealthy, you'll be able to get a better idea of how you can protect them and add value to what you do if you're in any way an advisor to them. So let's focus on the incident. So what was stolen? That's important. And there are aspects of insurance that will protect this if he was properly protected, but I don't know who his broker is. So let's assume he didn't have proper coverage in place. If he only had homeowner insurance or condo insurance for any of his large homes and condos, which I'm sure he has many, he would only have $5,000 or $2,500 roughly built in for stolen jewelry. That's not because of who he is. That's just how homeowner, condo, and renter's insurance operates. Insuring jewelry costs quite a bit more. It's doable, but you'll have to purchase it. You'll have to pay a little bit more. It's more likely that jewelry is going to get stolen than, let's say, a desk chair or your bed. And so when you look at a scenario like this, he had his jewelry stolen. Let's assume that he had coverage in place for it. He's going to have the ability, most likely, to have all of those pieces of jewelry replaced. So we'll assume most of what was stolen was his jewelry. What else was stolen was electronics. Electronics including his laptop. Now, you may or may not know this, and I don't mean to shock you if you had plans on asking her out, but he is engaged to one of the most famous and most beautiful women in the world, Jennifer Lopez. Let's say his laptop was stolen, and it contains text messages, videos, and pictures the world weren't meant to see. Now, not only do these thieves have about $500,000 worth of goods that they can now sell on the black market, they also have the laptop of a worldwide celebrity. So what that means is an additional thing that may come down the pike for A-Rod and J-Lo, or J-Rod, or whatever they call them, is that they may now get extorted for information on that laptop. So again, it could be pictures, it could be text messages, it could be emails, it could be iMessages, anything of that nature that maybe is not intended for the public, something that you might send a spouse or a friend that the world is not meant to see, can now become a threat against them. And they may have to pay out of pocket for that, if they don't have proper coverage in place. So there's insurance that you can buy for cyber extortion, but if they weren't working with an amazing risk advisor like us, then they may not have this in place, and they may lose a ton of money going forward, even if all of that jewelry and all of the electronics are replaced. And so that's a fundamentally new exposure that people need to be aware of. It's not just our physical belongings that are at risk of things like a fire or theft. It is now our digital belongings, our digital selves, the information about ourselves that we keep and store online, which every day that goes by grows and grows and grows if you use a cell phone. And the scary thing is, it's not only up to you to protect that information, it is also up to the individuals who create the systems such as iCloud where you actually store that information. So what can you do with that? How can you protect your stuff if it's not just you who's responsible for protecting it? And the answer is you can't. But what can you do if you can't fully protect what you own? Well, you can be intelligent about where you store it. You don't just go online at some random cloud site because it's cheap to use instead of iCloud. Not that you always have the option to do that, but you go with a trusted resource and you hope for the best and prepare for the worst. But how do you prepare for the worst? Well, you can buy coverage to put in place to help protect you from cyber extortion, from cyber fraud, from fraud in general, fraud, forgery, and embezzlement, for example, which especially as you get wealthy becomes an increased risk as you make more and more transactions. And so you can buy coverage. It's usually not too expensive. If you or a client are interested in this, reach out directly to us. We can talk in detail about that. But how does it pertain to A-Rod? If I was his risk advisor long before this event, we would have sat down with him and his entire family, who live with him at least, or whose electronics he controls, and we would have gone over step by step how they can protect their digital selves and their individual selves. And so that's a conversation that people have to be having with clients at this level, is you are exposed beyond the average individual. You are a target. You're not just a target for online and tabloid speculation. You're a target for violent crime, potentially. You're a target for theft. You're a target for cyber attacks. So whether it's a virus or being hacked, you are a bigger target and you need to be treated as such. An event like this could be prevented if you look at a man at A-Rod's level. He should have security with him at all times. And when I say with him at all times, they don't have to be at the dinner table with him, but someone should be watching his car, should have been. Going forward, I'm sure they will be. Even if it is a rental car, forget about if the rental company has to pay for the car being stolen. If you have goods and belongings in there, if you're a wealthy person, you leave your watch in there, that could be $50,000 to $250,000 maybe, easily, that you're letting sit in your car while you go eat dinner. So there should be someone who is a guard who is watching over that. You should have security in places like airports and general public places. And I'm sure he has some level of security detail. I'm sure ESPN provides a lot of that while he's on the job site. But clearly there was a lapse in his protection. And if somehow I've struck gold and A-Rod or one of his advisors is listening to this podcast, I would like nothing more than to be able to sit down and go over some of this stuff in depth to help make sure that these events do not occur again. The last thing that you want is to be shown as vulnerable if you're a celebrity and open yourself and your family up to copycat attackers. So that's the next step where you go here, is protecting future loss. You hope that there is insurance in place to help pay for the jewelry and electronics that were stolen. You hope to God that you can deactivate the computer system and that you have a backup somewhere, or at least that you didn't have sensitive data on there. But if you did have sensitive information on there, the next step is you have to mount a PR campaign. You have to get out in front of it. You have to say information was stolen from us. There could be embarrassing things that leak to the public. You want to have to get out in front of it, and there's PR experts who could explain much better than I am of what needs to be done, but that's a totally new expense and a new exposure. And again, even if all of the jewelry and electronics are paid for, there is still a massive chance of financial loss coming directly out of Mr. Rodriguez's pockets. And that's quite a shame. And again, J-Lo, his fiance, is now exposed. Maybe his kids are now exposed if their personal info is on his laptop and they're able to sign on to it. So you're able to see now there are exposures that are so far beyond what just meets the eye in these scenarios. And in this podcast, the Risk Directions podcast hosted by myself, we're going to delve in week by week or maybe on a bi-weekly basis and look at scenarios like this and try to get a better understanding and talk over some of the larger implications in scenarios that are going on in the world. In future episodes, we'll talk about cyber attacks that are going on. We'll talk about general risk of things like starting a business and how you can make decisions that help reduce your risk. And also look into how you can do things like make riskier decisions by being able to gather multiple data points and assess your risk better. And that's our specialty here. We are an insurance brokerage that primarily serves successful clients. So we're talking about successful families, successful individuals, successful businesses, and our goal is to best protect anyone who comes to us for assistance. It doesn't matter how big of a client they are. Our goal is to come up with a solution and be able to provide advice that keeps them as well protected as is physically possible. That's what we're here to do, and that's the intent of the podcast. If you're listening to it, we hope you walk away smarter and more knowledgeable on the topics that we go over, and we hope you'll subscribe. You can subscribe on SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube. You can also follow us on LinkedIn. You can follow me directly on LinkedIn, Hayden, Hayden. Last name is Kopser, Kopser. You can follow North Improvement LLC on Instagram and Facebook. On Instagram, we're at North Improvement. Same with Twitter. And we really hope that you will subscribe and be back for future episodes as we continue to delve into the wide world of risk.